All right, today is going to mostly be a final exam information slash review day. I'm going to give you some information about the final exam, maybe give you kind of a checklist of like topics that we covered that could show up on the final, um, and then the rest of the class will be time for you to work on whatever you need to work on. There's a few things available to use as tools to study for the final. And Can you guys hear me? Okay. If you're not hearing me, then make sure you check your speakers. I should be coming through. Um, but yeah, so let's start with information, and then I'll talk about what you have available to use and what you should be doing to study for a final exam. So let's talk about final exam. Info. The final exam is going to be on Wednesday, December 13, I believe. Yeah, December 13. And then the time for the final exam is 3 to 4:50. So kind of off from our regular class time. It's going to start at 3 instead of 2:30, and it's going to be on Wednesday. That means we don't meet on Monday. During finals week, you only go to your final exams. You don't go to the regularly scheduled classes. As far as location is concerned, it's going to be in those same two rooms that we've been doing our exams in. So rooms will be MH213 and LH402, depending on your assignment from the last three exams. So wherever you went for your exams before, you will go to the same room for the final exam. So let's talk about what types of things can be on the final. The final is cumulative, which means all of everything we covered for the whole semester is kind of fair game for the final. So let me give you kind of a checklist situation for that. So I'll break it down by exam. So from exam 1, some of the topics that we covered for exam, whether it was on exam 1 or not, some of the topics that could have been on exam 1 were everything that has to do with apportionment, which was using those 4 or 5 different methods to apportion seats based on the upper quota, lower quota, the average, whatever, the geometric mean, all of that. So we had Adams, Hamilton's, Hill-Huntington, Jefferson's, and Webster's. So we had 5 different ways of apportioning seats, so you should review those. And then right after that, we talked about flaws of apportionment. Which were those paradoxes. And there was a question on the first exam, I think, where it gave you there was a given scenario which described the situation, and then you had to name whether it was the Alabama paradox, the population paradox, or the new state paradox. So make sure you look through those, know each one of those, know scenarios for each one of those, and be able to tell when each one is represented. And the next topic from exam 1 was voting methods. This had to do with how we kind of tallied votes, how we counted and decided who the winner was when people were asked to rank candidates from like first place, second place, third place on their voting ballots. And we had a few different ways of counting and figuring out the winner. We had the Borda count, which I think did show up on the exam. But other than that, we also had the plurality method. We also had pairwise comparison. Which I think may have also shown up on the exam. And then finally, the instant runoff, where there were rounds, and each round the least first place vote getter was eliminated, and so on until somebody had majority vote. And then the last thing we had in exam 1, the last topic, was the finance topics, where we talked about simple and compound interest. We did calculations where we did monthly breakdowns of an amortized loan. These were the examples where we were either looking at buying a house or looking at buying a car, and what the calculations were for calculating the monthly payments and the interest portion and the principal portion. That was the table for amortized loans. And then we did average daily balance. Having to do with credit card balances and figuring out how credit card companies decide how much interest to add on at the end of the month. And then finally we did the APY, which was the annual percent yield. This was converting compound rates to annual rates. There was a pretty simple formula for setting that up and finding out what the annual percent yield is for any kind of compound interest or a continuous interest rate. Okay, so that's the main 4 topics for that were on exam 1. From exam 2, we have the topic of sets, with which we did Venn diagrams. And we did 2 types of kind of Venn diagram questions. We did Venn diagram questions with numbers. If you remember, like the bears that went to college example, the bears example where they took like English classes, history, and math. We did a whole worksheet on how to put those numbers into the Venn diagrams. And then the second type of Venn diagram question that we dealt with was the shading, where we had kind of overlapping Venn diagrams, and we figured out which area to shade in those Venn diagrams. And then the number example was the bears where we had to put the numbers into the different areas of a Venn diagram. So this one is for that one, and this is the shading example. All right, so we did a whole topic on sets and Venn diagrams, and then we moved into counting / probability problems. And in here, we kind of did a lot of things because the counting problems were kind of foundational for the probability questions. For the counting problems, we learned the product rule, kind of like the sandwich example, where like you have 3 types of bread, 4 types of cheese, and 7 types of meat to choose from. How many different sandwiches can you make? Where we just multiply the different options, right? Or if you're trying to figure out an outfit to wear for the day, you have so many pairs of shoes, so many pairs of pants and shirts and hats and so on. So that one was using the product rule, just multiplying the different options you have to count how many different outfits or how many different sandwiches or how many ways something can be done. And then when we went into probability, we talked about conditional probability, which was all of those questions that said given. So the given part of the information was just like information that we know that we used to kind of limit the sample space and do the probability question, answer the probability question using the limited sample space. Some examples of probability questions that we did involved playing cards, dice rolls, coin flips, and balls and boxes. The balls and boxes one was referring to a specific example that we did where there were 2 boxes, there were a certain number of colored balls in each box, and we took one ball out of the first box, put it into the second box without looking, and then asked for the probability of getting a certain color out of the second box. So that's what the balls and boxes example is referring to there. Other than that, we had coin flips, which were 50-50, dice rolls, where you can roll 2 dice and look at the sum of the dice that are rolled, or we can pull playing cards from a deck of playing cards. So make sure you know make sure you know the composition of a deck of cards, how many suits there are, how many cards of each suit, and so on. So make sure you know those specific things from the counting and probability section. And then finally, exam 2 had a section on expected value. Which is kind of an extension of the probability section, but I think it deserves its own topic here, main topic. Here we did mainly 2 types of things. We did the dice games. If you remember that day where you guys created your own dice games, where you had to calculate the expected probability and made sure it was a small negative number. These were essentially finding the expected value of the long run. If you played this game 1,000 times, 1,000,000 times, what would we expect to happen as a result of the game? Dice games were one, and then there was a raffle, kind of a raffle example as well, where I think the raffle example also exists on the WebAssign homework assignments, where there are raffle tickets being sold, and the prizes for first, second, third place are known. So you're trying to figure out how much you can charge for the raffle ticket to make a profit, and so on. So these are both essentially asking for long run expected outcome. Right, so that pretty much covers everything from exam 2, or all of the main topics from exam 2. And then exam 3 is the one you just took, so all of this should be pretty fresh in your mind from exam 3. We had the perimeter and area questions. Surface area volume questions. I guess perimeter and area for 2D shapes. Surface area / volume for 3D shapes. What else did we have in exam 3? Surface area volume, graphs, graph theory, which has a few things associated with it. First of all, terminology. Questions about Euler trails / circuits. Questions about Hamiltonian cycles. Mainly the Hamiltonian cycle question is using the algorithms, right? We're not asking whether or not the Hamiltonian cycle exists. Oh, for the Euler trail and circuit, there are theorems you should be using to justify whether or not an Euler trail or an Euler circuit exists, or a graph has an Euler circuit or trail. If a question says, does this graph have an Euler circuit and why? Your answer should be yes or no, and then name, or not name the theorem, but explain it using the theorem. Say whether it satisfies that specific theorem or it doesn't satisfy the theorem. So make sure you look through those for Euler circuits and trails. And then for Hamiltonian cycles, we had 3 algorithms. We had the nearest neighbor algorithm, the repeated nearest neighbor algorithm, and the cheapest edge algorithm. Right, so it could be a question that asks for all 3, just like in exam 3. Although exam 3 did not have a fractal question, it was one of the main topics that we covered for exam 3. So I'm going to put that on here. And even though there was no fractal question on exam 3, there may be a fractal question on the final. So as far as what to expect for that type of question, there were 2 things we did. We did either length or area of a fractal for any given step, like the first step, second step, third step. So you may be asked to find the length or area of a fractal for the first 3 or 4 iterations, depending on the description of the fractal. And I will tell you right now that there will be no general formula question. So you'll only be asked to find the length or area for the first few iterations of a fractal. So I won't ask you to write the general formula. I know that's one of the harder things to do on the spot, and we didn't really spend that much time on it. And there was only 1 homework question, so you didn't really see a lot of examples of it. But you should be able to find the length or area for the first 3 or 4 iterations of a fractal. And I think that's it for the topics that are going to be on the final exam. Oops. For the final exam, let's go back to the top here, because we didn't really talk about what kind of cheat sheet you can use, because you've been allowed to use a flashcard for the 3 exams this semester. I'm going to say that you can use a cheat sheet, full page, both sides. So you can use a full sheet of paper, right on both sides of the page if you want to. I mean, you should use a cheat sheet, definitely, if I'm allowing it. Put anything on there that you can't seem to remember on the spot. If there are things that you have already memorized or then don't really waste time putting them on there. The more crowded your cheat sheet is, the harder it is to find things. So try to keep it to things that that you need to remember and that you don't want to commit to memory. Question is, can I just use the 3 flashcards from before? And the answer is yes. If you have your flashcards for the first 3 exams, you could just use those 3 flashcards. You cannot, however, use all 3 flashcards and a new sheet of paper. So it's one or the other. So it's full page, both sides, or 3 flashcards. And those are 3 by 5 inch flashcards. So you can use kind of either or. Yeah, I would recommend making a new cheat sheet, just so it actually helps you study to make that cheat sheet. This Zoom is going to be posted, yes. So if you missed the beginning of this, explanation, then you can check the video later. Otherwise, yeah, so you can use a full sheet or the 3 flashcards if you have them. So let me talk about best ways to study. Since I've broken it down by exam, you can use this as kind of a checklist to say, okay, do I know all 5 of these apportionment types? Go back and look through the notes, read through these apportionment types, and then put them on the cheat sheet, or make sure they're on your flashcard. Use this kind of a checklist for things to put on your flashcard if you need to remember certain things, like what each paradox represents, how to calculate each one of these counting methods or voting methods. So use this as a checklist when you're making your cheat sheet. Best way to study would be to use the previous exams. And I know I didn't really get to pass back the exams as much as I would like to for this class. So because of that, I posted the blank exams on Canvas. If you haven't seen those already, if you go to our Canvas course, they should be right under the links module. There's a blank exams module that has the first 3 exams that you took. So it might be a good idea to print blank versions of those exams and sit down and do them. Or after you make your cheat sheet, do the exams using your cheat sheet. Make sure there's everything on your cheat sheet is used or useful, or make sure you have everything on your cheat sheet that you're going to need. So study those 3 exams. I would do that. If you have time, you can also look through the exam reviews that we've done for the 3 exams. And then the last tool for studying would be the WebAssign homework assignments, which I've also reopened. Somebody reminded me, so thanks for doing that. All of the homework assignments for the whole semester are now reopened. So if you haven't, if there was a homework assignment that you didn't quite complete or get 100% on, or you missed homework assignments in the past, Go back and do those. It'll increase your grade. It'll help you study for the final. And then you can ask me questions about those if you run into something that you don't know how to do. They will all be due. Let me put that on here as well. That finishes the information. WebAssign, homework, due. They're all due 12/13, which is the day of the final, at 2:59 p.m. Which means they're due right before the final exam. So final exam is at 3 p.m. on Wednesday. These are due 2:59. So literally right before you walk into the exam is when those are due. I will not extend that any past that. Everything should be due the final exam. It makes sense to use those to study for the final exam. So make sure you get those done. Like I said, do the blank exams, go over the exam reviews, do the homework assignments. If you already have 100% on all of the old homework assignments, it may help to go back to certain sections that you struggled with and do some more practice problems on WebAssign, which I'm sure you can redo problems on there if you choose to do so. How many questions is the final? That's a good question. Let me take a look. Number of questions wise, I can't tell you how many on this final because I don't have it yet for this semester. But a previous final had 17 questions. Most of them were individual questions. Some of them had a couple of parts to them, like the questions where it asks you to find the perimeter and area of a shape. That's one question, but it kind of has two parts because you have to find perimeter area. So there's 17 like main questions that some of them have multiple parts on. That's how the a previous final exam looks. Are there any other questions that I haven't really talked about? Okay, that's enough of